You're listening to the podcast Coffee with Mike and Julie, Libertarians Talk Psychology. This is current commentary from an MBA businessman and a PhD psychologist.
Look what they done to my song, Ma.
So in thinking about the country, and my view of it is we're in a feminine principle dominates right now. I was talking to somebody about when we were in the masculine principle, and I think we were talking about this. But one of the reasons I think Donald Trump was so projected to is because he's like uber masculine. You know, he's got it in spades. What they call narcissism and egoism. You know, it's just a lot of masculine BS. But you know, it's like that doesn't bother me. But anyway, what we are in is in a feminine cycle. The collective is in a feminine cycle. So I saw the Gallup poll. 88% of the population of the United States thinks things suck. The countries. I don't know what they ask. I didn't see what the questions were. But 88% in psychology, anything in social psychology that gets to 88% is like a monstrosity number. I was like, oh my God.
Definitely significant.
Definitely. So what you got is you got the largest majority of both sides think everything is catastrophic. So thinking about this, I thought about what I wanted to throw out today for us to talk about is the feminine. When an organization or a company or a group or a country is led by the feminine, what you get is a suppression of conflict, because the feminine is where you put a characteristic like conflict avoidant. Did your mother ever say, if you can't say anything nice at all, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all? Did you ever hear that?
Oh, I've heard it. I don't remember.
My mother used to say it. It's like, I guess it really worked for her. It actually did not work for her. It actually does not work. But it's coming from the feminine principle that harmony is more important than debate. So you get this feminine principle, and I think it's also, you know, my hypothesis is also like Jack Dorsey. I mean, he's gone over the top now with
Twitter guy,
the Twitter CEO. Although he did make, I also read where all the billionaires are making out like thieves from the pandemic.
Oh yeah,
they're like Jack Dorsey's net worth went up like $25 billion. I mean, he's, you know, that's another thing we can talk about is what it means for these billionaires to profit from the suffering of others. I don't know. You'd think that would be on someone's mind. But in any case, he's doubling down on his censorship. So here's the idea from psychology, and this has been around a long time. One study that I like to cite, I don't even know what year this is, but it's way back, where they studied... I
just wanted to ask if you're going to get into the positive and negative feminine and positive and negative masculine, because that's
something you're interested in.
Well, especially the way you're couching this.
Well, you know, we can. I'm going to throw this out. I'm going to throw these two studies out, which I think are fascinating and do relate to this, and then we can talk about cultures. This is... a study on conflict cultures. And let me just make this short, because I tend to go on and on when I get into this research. But they studied, they compared collaborative conflict solutions. Now they looked at the culture. They measured people's feelings and behavior and across the board. So it wasn't individual variable. It was an organizational variable. So they were looking at it from the organizational level. Collaborative, dominating, and avoidant conflict. And they studied a number of characteristics. But the bottom line is the collaborative culture, much, much better on all measures of validity. Safety, climate, distributive justice, procedural justice, interpersonal justice, learning orientation, and performance orientation. Actually, the performance orientation, I mean, this is very interesting, was a lot less, but learning was correlated at 0.64, which is kind of off the chart kind of correlation.
But you're not just saying correlation, you're saying the quality of the decision making?
Well, that's not a variable. The quality of the decision making is not a variable they studied, but you could certainly relate it to learning. A learning orientation absolutely relates to quality of decision making. They didn't study quality of decision making particularly.
Okay.
They studied performance, orientation, climate. So I don't want to dig too deeply into all of this. I mean,
right.
you can read the study. It's Gelflin, Leslie, Keller, and DeDrew. And I think it's in Journal of Applied Psychology. I don't really have that right now. Okay, but to not belabor this, the dominating culture, safety, negative 0.57 correlation. In other words, dominating cultures don't really work except a little bit on performance. So that's the authoritarian style. That's the dominating authoritarian, no talking about anything. But what's interesting is the conflict avoidant cultures also had negative correlations to validity data. The validity meaning the characteristics we want to see in a organization with good teamwork. We want to see a safety climate. We want to see a justice climate. We want to see a learning orientation. Well, they found negative relationship to safety, justice, and this is avoidant. So this is censorship, the no talk rule, let's don't discuss it, let's don't debate it. Learning orientation was the highest negative correlation. So it's not
What is that? A learning
orientation climate. So the avoidant culture, you'd think avoidant culture would not impact learning, but it does impact learning. So you're frowning. So
I just have to ask. I'm confused about the study. So it sounds like this correlation is somehow some measure of how well each of these styles works.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, So that's the correlate. You correlate the predictor variable to the validity criterion.
Okay.
So that shows you the relationship between the two. Yeah.
Okay. So it's some measure of how well these things work. And so my big question is, how do they measure when you have cooperation? I mean, I can see dominance and I can see avoidance, but how do they...
Well, you're questioning what their measures were?
Well, I'm curious myself, how, if I were to get with a group of people, how would we ever know that we have a decision that is
collaborative?
Collaborative, yeah.
Well, that's a very good point, because, for instance, I've been in groups. I mean, you're kind of a collaborative manager in your style. I've been told that I'm extremely collaborative, and I measured it with I measured myself with one instrument, conflict style measurement, and found out, I am not avoidant. I wonder if that was a Freudian slip. I am collaborative. And then my next style is, if someone's not collaborating with me, I'm competitive. I found out, and I'm going to make this available somehow to people, because everyone that's in management or in a leadership role or in life needs to know their style. This is a blind spot people have, but I found out I didn't do any avoiding. You remember this? Mm-hmm. And so I found out, in the results said, you need to use avoiding more. I mean, avoiding is a important style to use with conflict. Sometimes just avoid it. And I thought, oh, okay. that gets into overfunctioning, underfunctioning.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of psychology here. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but let me tell you one more study before we go on. This is a cute report in the Heath's book, Chip and Dan Heath's book. So they reported where Nancy Lowry and David Johnson studied a bunch of kids, and they were looking at conflict styles, basically. They had two groups, and they facilitated one to seek agreement and harmony, and they facilitated the other to debate and have conflict. And so they found that the kids that were facilitated to debate were much more interested in the topic, and that the ones that were in agreement were less interested and less likely to visit the library to get additional information. But here's the fun thing. Here's the most telling thing. Then they asked the kids if they wanted to forego their recess and come watch a film about what the topic that they had worked on. Only 18% of the agreement kids left their recess to come see the film, while 45, nearly half of all the kids in the debate group, sacrificed their own recess time to come watch a film about the topic. So it's extremely motivating, and people are curious when they get into this learning mode. And this study, the study was across the board on the learning environment, 0.64 relationship with the collaborative conflict solution climates, a negative 0.57 to the dominating, and a negative 0.32 to the avoidant. So what you get with this censorship and this avoiding debate.
Well, okay, I'm sorry. But the collaborative and debate are really the same thing.
Yes.
Okay, so
yes, in a dominating culture, there's no debate. There's
no
just
debate.
The king decides.
Yeah, and those in avoidant, there's no debate. So
there's suppression.
With debate, you get collaboration.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
well, that helps answer my question from
before
about how do I know I have a collaborative discussion. And the answer is if it's being
when
debated.
you get in a lively debate. When you get in a lively debate, so the point here is we're in, and we can go back to feminine and masculine here, but we're in a culture right now, and this censorship is coming from the left political group, is to shut down the debate. That's what it looks to me like the censorship is for, is to shut down all disagreement. Well, when you do that, you severely restrict your learning culture. But with 88% of the population being dissatisfied, I think to the degree of being totally royally pissed off with both sides. I mean, you don't get 88% of a sample without having both sides royally pissed off. Mm-hmm. That's actually a good thing if we have debate, if we have logical, reasoned analysis and debate. So looking at so it's not so bad that 88% are upset. It's a good thing, because as a country, we learn through suffering. We're suffering, and we're all engaged like these kids. We're watching every source of information. We're curious as to how this is supposed to work out.
So what you're saying is the dissatisfaction may trigger debate.
Well, it will trigger debate. There's some stuff going on, like this guy, My Pillow fellow, Lindell, is being censored and attacked. This is interesting. This may back to the masculine and feminine topic that you want to bring up. Isaac came up with this years ago. He said very clearly, and I kind of believe most of what Isaac found out, is like one of the most intelligent psychologists that ever lived. And he said there's no difference in aggression between the two political groups. None at all. There's just,
Just style.
The progressives, the liberals. It's not liberal. I don't want to use the term liberal because I don't think the progressives are still liberal. I'm with.
They've changed.
They have totally. They are not accepting enough to be considered liberal. The libertarians are liberal. We're liberal. We accept everybody if they're not violating the rights of somebody else. But the progressives do not. Let me tell you, I'm in a nest of progressives, and they are totally intolerant. But Isaac said that the left is absolutely as aggressive as the right, except they are indirect. And you see that now. The cancel culture, which is kill the messenger, that's an attack on an individual because of their beliefs. I hope people get that. That's an attack, economically, physically, whatever, on an individual because they believe differently than you. That is, I was thinking, are we in America still with that shit? And people tolerating that shit? And participating in it? Now, I have boycotted some actors' films, so I am probably, a little bit prone to it like everybody else.
It affects me.
I get affected, but then I think...
If these people get really outspoken, extreme... I can't think of an extreme conservative, but I've sure known them personally when extreme conservative turns me off too.
Well, I can't excuse my own boycotting. Here's how the learning environment works. When I see them boycott a guy like Mike Lindell, who that guy has one life story that's amazing. He was like a Skid Row addict. And he now, he's like a marketing genius. But I have to say, I bought his pillows. Those are some fine pillows. And they come in the cute little, they're rolled up, and you can wash them and put them in your dryer. That guy is a genius entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. Okay, so he's like pro-Trump because he's like a Christian and he follows God. And, I believe he says that God and Christ saved him from his life. And, he's come from the pits. Yeah. He's an American story.
Yeah.
And they boycotted him. So I'm thinking, well, number one, if you want to boycott him, you haven't tried his pillow because his pillow is fabulous. It's the best pillow I've ever owned.
I'm conflicted about, actors who use their platform to express their opinion, but even Lindell, who's using his platform, his advertising platform, to express his political opinion. I'm conflicted about that. I think these people are outside of their role when they're in a business. Well, they're in a business, and they are acting outside of their business when they.
I don't know how I feel about.
I know that's free speech, and I don't.
It is free speech.
Yeah, and I don't.
It may not be wise of them to do that, but it is. But we don't make any rules in this country that you have a certain role, you're not allowed to speak freely about something. And I would never
and I'm not
condone such a thing.
I'm not saying that. But I really admire Dolly Parton. She's got it straight. She does not express her political opinion.
I see your point.
She has her business model straight. She's an actress and a singer and an entertainer, and she does not deviate from that, and I admire it.
Yeah, and it's exceptional. You don't see too many people who are. In fact, right now, you and I are deviating, aren't we? Sort of, we're using our credentials to say that we know something other people don't know, and people should be listening to us.
I guess you could argue that, but neither of us is famous. We don't have much of a platform.
We could talk forever about what's appropriate and what's inappropriate. Like the LPA, the psychologist in Louisiana, they made a statement during the Black Lives Matter protest and the murder of George Floyd, which my own view of that was negligent homicide, but I haven't seen the facts. But I'm thinking that wasn't homicide, that was negligent homicide. That guy was an idiot to put his knee on that man's neck that long. He was like a fool. But anyway, that's my own personal opinion, and it's an opinion. It's not based on any particular facts except the video that I saw. But so we were all through those protests. LPA put out a statement and said, we object to racism in any form and blah, 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 and understand the feelings of the protesters. Well, LPA didn't put out any support for the protesters for the election, which they considered fraud and also a crime. I mean, not as big as that, but groups and individuals take stands. Mm-hmm. They take stands. And
I would say that LPA should have been sticking with their overall
absolutely
mission, professional mission.
Advanced psychology as a science and as a profession. I mean,
they deviated.
There
from
you
that.
go. I
They
agree with you
deviated
on
from
that.
So
It's like how does that advanced psychology as a science and a profession? That's a political statement.
That's right. So I really disagree with LPA making a political statement.
Now, I, on the other hand, put out I meaning the Psychology Times part of me, put out an article on could police psychology help? Because that's my thought is this is a matter of selection testing. That guy should not have been allowed the power of being a policeman. That's a huge responsibility of power. And he had some complaints against him already. Mm-hmm. And he also should have been trained, because I think George Floyd might have been mentally incapacitated. There were some problems with the gentleman, that they should know about. And I know police psychologists who work in this area, who have tremendous skill to apply to this. And by the way, that department, in that article, had cut their selection testing.
But your point is, there was a role for the psychology profession on that issue, but it was not to make a feel-good political statement. It was to make a scientific contribution.
That's their mission. But as many human groups do, they forget their mission and they default to their religion. And your religion is your belief and your worldview. It's like, what's good, what's bad, what's good, what's evil, that's the religious aspect, which is kind of chaotic right now in our country. People don't have a good religion. A lot of people don't have a good religion, so they have a political religion. But anyway, so wrapping up, yes, this has to do with the collective being being directed more by the feminine principle.
Specifically of the negative feminine.
Well, I'm not saying that, but okay. Let me just say that, the collective unconscious would be where the negative expresses itself if you use the analogy of the individual. The shadow is in the unconscious. So it does appear to me that the feminine principle is kind of directing the country, and the awareness to the shadow is gone right now. Because another potential thing is you can't get as much projection to an individual as we just had for 4 years without having a shadow element to the collective unkonscious.
And tell us what you mean by shadow.
The dark side.
The unconscious.
The unconscious, the unknown, the split off. What I find with a lot of the progressives is they split off their aggressive side and deny it. And when you do that, then you are vulnerable to projecting it
Oh,
to somebody else.
oh, okay. Assuming the other person is the one who's being...
Yeah, you see it. It becomes activated at the unconscious level. It's very interesting phenomena, which is proven, by the way. You think like that's a bunch of psychobabble. It's actually not psychobabble. It's actually proven that you split it off and suppress it into the unconscious. This is how it works at the individual level. You suppress it into the unconscious, and it's actually activated at the unconscious level. And so because it's activated, you tend to see it in others. Mm-hmm. Because you can't see it in yourself, then you see it in others. And therefore, that's how projection works. Well, some of these friends of mine spit nails just hearing or seeing an image of Donald Trump. It's almost like beyond, it is very psychological. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not reasonable. It's not reasonable. Their hatred for a person they don't even know. They only know the persona.
Yeah.
And he has an interesting persona, and I have to admit that. And you could definitely dislike some of his characteristics.
Okay, so how would you like to conclude this topic?
Let's just say that we're in a learning situation, and 88% of us are disgruntled and disappointed and open-minded to information, and so more information flow would be a good thing.
Yeah, and you're saying the 88% is inviting debate. That's what that really means.
Well, I don't know if they're inviting debate. That's more complicated.
Okay.
But I think it's a Greek poet that said, "It is God's rule that he who learns must suffer." So we're suffering.
Okay.
And we're learning. We are learning. I don't know about everybody else, but I'm learning.
Yeah. It is a learning time.